r/jailbait. People stumbling onto disturbing imagery they could never unsee. Comments that should never have existed turning into something far worse than anyone expected. Most people think they've seen the darkest corners of Reddit. Maybe you've stumbled across a creepy story, a disturbing photo, or one of those rabbit holes that keeps you awake at night. But there are certain threads that were on an entirely different level. Threads that started out looking completely ordinary until one comment changed everything. As thousands of people began digging deeper, the posts became stranger, darker, and almost impossible to explain. People stopped treating them like internet mysteries and started wondering if they were witnessing something real. Comments began disappearing. Users deleted their accounts. Moderators rushed to lock the threads before they spiraled even further out of control. And in some cases, Reddit decided they couldn't stay online at all. Today, we're counting down the 6 most disturbed Reddit threads of all time that ended up getting banned. And trust me, by the time we get to number 1, you'll understand why some people wish they'd never clicked on them in the first place. Thread 1, r/jailbait. This subreddit was devoted entirely to sharing suggestive and revealing photos of underage girls. Not dark fiction, not edgy memes. Actual images of actual children, posted publicly on one of the most visited websites in the world. The community had thousands of subscribers, and it operated in the open, not buried in some obscure corner of the internet, but sitting right there for anyone to stumble across. What made it disturbing wasn't just the existence of the images. It was the response underneath them. Users weren't just viewing this content, they were requesting more of it, commenting on it, normalizing it as community content. The thread that finally broke everything open happened when an r/jailbait user posted an image of an underage girl and claimed to have nude photos of her. Dozens of other users immediately began sending that poster private messages, requesting those nude images. More photos of a child. That wasn't a community with a few bad actors at the edges. That was a community whose core function in that moment was the active solicitation of child exploitation material. In late September 2011, CNN reported on it directly, and the story exploded. Reddit administrators closed the subreddit shortly after, but it took external pressure, a national news report, and a wave of public outrage before Reddit moved. The platform didn't catch it internally. It didn't act out of basic moral instinct. It took a journalist forcing the issue into the public eye. The aftermath didn't end there. r/jailbait's most prolific moderator went by the username u/Violentacrez. And he had also moderated other controversial communities across the platform, a detail that would resurface and ignite an even bigger scandal just 1 year later. If you thought a forum built on exploiting children couldn't be topped in violation of basic consent, the next thread found a way to apply that same blueprint to adult women, stripping away knowledge and consent entirely while hiding behind a legal technicality. Thread 2, r/Creepshots. The entire premise was sharing suggestive or revealing photos of women taken without their awareness. Candid shots. Women going about their daily lives, walking down the street, sitting on a train, shopping, completely unaware that someone had photographed them, and uploaded the image for thousands of strangers to comment on, rate, and request more of. The subreddit framed this as a free speech issue, arguing that photos taken in public spaces were fair game. That logic sounds almost coherent, until you actually consider what was happening to the person in the photo, who never agreed to be anyone's content, and likely never even knew the photo existed. What cracked this one open was investigative journalist Adrian Chen at Gawker. He published an expose identifying the real-life identity behind the account u/Violentacrez, the same prolific moderator from r/Jailbait. Chen revealed his actual name, where he lived, and that he had built a career moderating some of Reddit's most exploitative communities. The piece didn't just expose one person. It ignited a massive public debate about anonymity online, and whether platforms like Reddit had created infrastructure for industrialized harm against real people. The moderator reportedly lost his job almost immediately after the story broke. Facing that level of exposure, r/Creepshots went dark within days. Here's the pattern worth sitting with. Reddit didn't ban either community because it looked inward and decided this was wrong. Both fell because outside pressure. A news organization, a journalist, made the cost of inaction finally outweigh the cost of acting. That's not a footnote. That's the blueprint for almost everything still on this list. But not every disturbing thread on this list announced itself this openly. The next one took the exact same pattern and wrapped it in something far more insidious. Because this one didn't look like a hate community from the outside. It looked like a joke. Thread 3, r/frenworld. On the surface, r/frenworld was a subreddit full of cartoons. Pepe the Frog edits, clown imagery, deliberately childish spelling. The entire aesthetic was designed to read as harmless internet silliness. Users called each other friends. They wrote in baby talk diction. They used coded words like bop instead of what they actually meant, which was committing violence or genocide. Honk honk was their stand-in for Heil Hitler. Long nose was their slur for Jewish people. The community built a layer of plausible deniability so thick that a casual observer scrolling past would see nothing but absurdist meme culture. That was the entire point. That was the architecture. The Times of Israel and the Daily Dot both investigated and found what was underneath the cartoon frogs. References to Holocaust denial, the USS Liberty incident, and fabricated racial crime statistics. All the classic scaffolding of anti-Semitic radicalization, wrapped in enough irony and childish language to survive longer before enforcement caught up. By the time Reddit finally banned r/frenworld on June 20th, 2019, the community had accumulated around 60,346 subscribers. That's not a fringe group of a few dozen bad actors. That's a mid-sized city's worth of people who found a place where genocidal ideology was being laundered through cartoon aesthetics, and who kept showing up for it. A companion subreddit, r/honkler, running the same content, was banned 12 days later. What makes this one different from the first two threads is what it reveals about adaptation. The childish language and meme camouflage weren't accidental. They were a calculated response to watching earlier subreddits get caught and banned. These communities learned. The harm didn't disappear after r/Jailbait and r/Creepshots fell. It just got better at hiding. While r/frenworld was busy camouflaging genocide and baby talk, a different corner of Reddit was running something even more brazen. A community that didn't bother with plausible deniability at all. Thread 4. r/beatingwomen. r/beatingwomen was exactly what it sounds like. The community featured graphic depictions of violence against women. Not commentary on violence, not news coverage of it. Not even the kind of edgy, dark humor framing other subreddits used as cover. Just the content itself, posted and consumed by a community that had organized specifically around it. What Reddit's eventual investigation revealed wasn't just that the content was horrific. It was that the people running it had built active infrastructure to protect themselves. The moderators were caught sharing users' personal information with each other and coordinating to shield one another from site-wide bans. This wasn't a community that drifted into bad behavior over time. This was a community that had developed its own internal defense system, specifically against accountability. Reddit banned r/beatingwomen on June 9th, 2014. And then, almost immediately, the community's founder simply rebooted the entire thing under the name r/beatingwomen2. Same content. Same purpose. New URL. The founding account was banned directly in response. But the attempt itself tells you everything about the mentality at work. The assumption that platform rules were an obstacle to route around, not a signal that the behavior itself was the problem. The contrast with r/frenworld is striking. r/frenworld spent enormous creative energy on camouflage. r/beatingwomen didn't bother with any of it. Both survived longer than they should have. The approach almost didn't matter. What mattered was whether outside scrutiny had arrived yet. r/frenworld hid genocide behind cartoon frogs and baby talk. But r/beatingwomen didn't even bother with a disguise. Which approach do you think survived longer on the platform? The camouflage or the brazen? Drop your answer in the comments below, because the next case makes both of them look almost tame by comparison. Thread 5. The Chimpire. The term Chimpire referred to a network of subreddits and affiliated websites built around anti-black racism. Not as subtext, not dressed in irony, but as the explicit organizing principle. The anchor of that network was a subreddit Reddit banned in June 2013 for a combination of vote manipulation, inciting violence, and actively disrupting other communities by flooding them with racist content. Reddit's general manager at the time noted publicly that the subreddit had been given multiple chances to come into compliance with site rules before the ban came through. Multiple chances. For a community whose name and stated purpose left no ambiguity whatsoever about what it was. What made the Chimpire structurally different from r/frenworld wasn't the content. Both were organized around racial hatred. The difference was the network. r/frenworld was a single subreddit. The Chimpire was a web of interconnected communities and external sites, which meant that banning any one node didn't collapse the whole thing. Users migrated. Subreddits respawned under adjacent names. The affiliated external sites kept the community's infrastructure intact between bans. The same impulse that drove the r/beatingwomen founder to launch r/beatingwomen 2 within hours of the original ban, but organized at a far larger scale and with real coordination. The Chimpire most clearly illustrates something the earlier cases only implied. Reddit's reactive moderation model doesn't just fail to stop harm, it actively shapes the form harm takes. Communities that got banned learned to distribute themselves. They built redundancy into their architecture. They stopped relying on a single subreddit and started building ecosystems that could absorb a ban and keep running. After everything we've covered, the explicit imagery, the cartoon frog camouflage, the graphic violence, the networked hate infrastructure, the final entry doesn't announce itself with anything that dramatic. It announces itself with a health question. Thread 6. Reddit's Misinformation Ecosystem. Reddit's Misinformation Ecosystem isn't a single banned subreddit with a founding date and a shutdown story. It's a condition. In 2021, the United States Senate sent a letter directly to Reddit's CEO, Steve Huffman, expressing concern about COVID-19 misinformation spreading across the platform. A formal letter from a branch of the federal government, telling the CEO that the platform had a health misinformation problem. It wasn't containing. The following year, researchers examined Reddit communities built around urinary tract infections and found an abundance of unsourced, potentially harmful medical advice, circulating as accepted community wisdom, including the suggestion that fasting could cure an active bacterial infection. That's not political radicalization. That's someone in genuine physical pain, asking strangers for help, and receiving advice that could leave them significantly sicker while a real infection spreads unchecked. The mechanism driving it is what researchers call the echo chamber effect. Repeated, unsourced claims, shared often enough within a closed community, eventually calcify into accepted fact. Reddit's decentralized moderation, user anonymity, and structural absence of fact-checking make it nearly ideal for this process to run uninterrupted across thousands of communities simultaneously. A 2023 NPR article explicitly warned that users should exercise caution before treating user-created, unsourced Reddit content as reliable information, a warning that arrived years after the pattern had already embedded itself across the platform. What makes this the most unsettling entry on the entire list isn't the scale, though the scale is genuinely alarming. It's the absence of a fix. Every other entry had a moment. A CNN report, a journalist identifying a moderator, a public outcry that finally made inaction too expensive, where external pressure created enough cost to force action. The misinformation problem has no equivalent moment because the damage doesn't concentrate. It disperses. It shows up as one person who didn't go to the doctor in time, and another who tried the wrong remedy, and another who walked away from a thread, more confident in a false belief than when they arrived. There's no single subreddit to shut down. There's no founder to ban. There's just the platform's architecture, doing exactly what it was built to do. Connecting people, amplifying the loudest voices, and moving on. And that, more than anything else on this list, is what should keep you up at night. Not the communities Reddit eventually banned, but the harm that's still running right now, quietly, in plain sight, dressed up as a helpful answer to a simple question. Subscribe if you want more like this, and watch this one next.